Welcome to the Teach Them Diligently podcast. We are David and Leslie Nunnery, and we are so grateful that you've joined us here this week. Every week, we talk about discipleship focused homeschooling for Christian families. And this time, we're really excited to talk about how our mission can practically guide our day by day choices and decisions. Once you realign the way you think with your mission, the friction and chaos that you feel in your family will just start to melt away. And the freedom that you get from that is incredible. Now, Sunday night in our homeschool subjects email, we shared an article all about realigning your thinking about homeschooling, about parenting, about all the roles you play. And in today's podcast, we're going to break those ideas down a little bit more and get really practical about how that can look in your family. Now, if you don't currently receive our free Sunday night homeschool subjects newsletter, we'd love to have you join us there. You can subscribe at homeschoolsubjects.com anytime. Again, that's homeschoolsubjects.com. Our family mission statement has always been to raise our children to know and love God and people, and to prepare them well to walk through whatever doors God opens for them in the days ahead. That mission was incredibly helpful in ordering and designing the educational part of our heart schooling efforts, and it gave so much structure to our days. With your mission as your guide, you and your children can experience more peace and confidence each day because all will know what's really what's most important in any situation. Now, David, families a lot of times get knocked off on this. Their thinking gets askew. They know what their mission is, they understand it, but there's this disconnect between mission and day by day choices. Why is that?
Well, I mean, when you and I were talking about this previously, there's this aspect of some families, honestly, this is not a big deal to them. They don't care. And you and I immediately started thinking about our audience and
Like,
started
not
thinking
our
about that
people.
our people aren't gonna,
They
this is
care.
something, this is a big deal to them.
Yeah.
And they're worried. This keeps them up at night. And if this is something that is really a big deal to you, that you want to actually, you probably have set forth some sort of a mission. You know, you haven't actually crafted the sentence, you haven't got it up on your wall, you haven't, you haven't built it out, but you have something in your head that you think this is what I want to do,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it has something to do with Jesus Christ and the gospel, and you really want your children to understand who Jesus Christ is.
Discipleship, going for the hearts of your kids. For almost all of the families that I talk to at Teach Them Diligently events that I talk to through email and so on, that is a big deal. Those are our people.
Yeah.
That's who we're talking to.
So if you're our people and you're listening, this is what happens to you, and what happened to us is that you just get caught in just day-to-day stuff. I mean, let's take something as simple as family devotions, right? It's something that we knew we should have been doing and that we should be doing. And we had the goal to do it, but what would happen is stuff would just get in the way.
Yeah.
Run a little late on dinner. There's a ball game. There's a child gets real fussy, and you have to deal with that problem. You are just so incredibly tired, and you can't even think about it. Or you have this plan, and the whole thing is falling apart, and so you get to the moment where you're about ready to have family devotions, and you're like, I just can't do this. And so that's what happens to families, is that it's just the day-to-day stuff just kind of knocks you off.
Well, and truly, it's like there's this tidal wave of reasons to get off mission. Like everything in culture, everything like lines up against it if we are not really safeguarding it in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And so the thing to kind of keep in mind here is that simplification is really important.
Yeah.
Are you right? You don't need to overcomplicate this. And I think that that's the other thing that we do, is that it allows things to knock us off course, is that we overcomplicate the
Yeah,
whole thing.
for sure.
And so we've kind of broken this down to three things, right? And families that get knocked off, this is things that actually happens to you, this is what's going to keep you back on.
I was about to say, these are the things that will keep you from getting
That's right.
askew, that will keep you from getting off course, that will keep you on mission.
So
And honestly, they are really, really simple, but they are incredibly impactful.
so the first one would be commitment. And let's just face it, if you have the goal, right, to bring your children to Jesus Christ, you have the mission. This is what your mission is, and you want to disciple your children. Um, you setting that out as a goal is really just this first level. Is that it's this, you have some level of a commitment to it. For us, and our journey was not necessarily like many of the other people's journeys that may be listening. There's some similarities, but what happened to us is that we were going to a church in Georgia, and the pastor says it's high time the parents start to think you're going to have to run over me to go to hell.
Yep.
Um, Parents no longer should be worried about just keeping their kids out of jail, right? And he actually used that
Yeah.
phrasing in that same sermon.
Yeah.
And when he did that, I was like, yeah, that's right.
Well, and at that time, we only had two of our four, and they were both itty bitty. So
That's
we
right.
were really, really early in our parenting career. And so the thought of we are going to do everything that we can to stand in the way of our children not knowing Jesus. Like we are going to do everything that we can to bring them to Jesus, to introduce them to him, to give them that foundation for a faith of their own that will stick with them. That became a driving force and a huge part of our commitment well before we got to any kind of a decision about homeschooling or anything else. That was primary.
This is very early on.
Yeah.
And we were had been married for very long either,
Yeah.
right? I mean, we were pretty young. And not only was it just, a commitment, this was like a high standard, right?
Yeah.
This was like raising the standard. You go from, I just want to keep my children from going to jail,
Or embarrassing me,
which
because a lot of parents just don't want their kids to embarrass them.
that's right, to flipping that to, no, I am actually going to be the one that does everything I can to bring my children to Jesus Christ. My standard is now no longer just keep them from embarrassing me.
Yeah.
My standard is now I'm bringing them to Jesus Christ. They're going to have to run over me, go in the other direction, right, in order to go into hell. And there's like this immediate,
It's very
intense
proactive.
commitment that is proactive.
Yeah.
And if that's your goal, really, this is the stage that you're at,
Yeah.
right? You're only at stage one. Okay. So that's the other thing to kind of keep in mind here is that you're only really at stage one. Goals are not enough.
Right.
You have to do more
You
than
have to
just
have
say,
that commitment to start building the structure.
that's right. That's right. You have to build more structure below that goal, which
Yeah.
is a whole nother discussion, probably another podcast episode. And we probably have talked about it
Yeah.
in the past. But the first step is commitment.
Yep. And then you've got to, as you are committed to that, really start recognizing and realizing that what you do matters. That you are God's chosen vessel in your child's life. You are the one that he created to parent that child. Because whether by birth or by choice, God put that young man, that young lady into your family for a reason. And so understanding that what you do matters is really, really
So
important.
you're an active participant. So this is no longer, the other side of this is that it's like you're in ocean and you're treading water and you're completely at the mercy of the current
Yeah.
that is around you, and you are powerless to go against it. And I don't think that's the power, and I don't think that's what the Lord has for us. What the Lord has for us is that you are an active participant in his plan. That's the
Mm.
reason why there was a great commission.
Hmm.
He was speaking directly to the disciples, and he said, "Go into all the world." It wasn't like, "Hey, I'm going to drop manna from the sky, and then all you have to do is look up." It's you're an active participant. You are the one that is actually taking the gospel into the world when he's talking to the disciples. And I think he does the same thing with parents, where he's like, I want you involved in this process of bringing your children to me.
Yeah.
And I want you to be an active participant, and what you do matters. Now, granted, you can't save them, right?
Right.
Only Jesus Christ can save them. But I want you bringing your children to Jesus Christ. You remember in Mark, in that story where the parents are bringing their children to Jesus Christ, and the disciples stopped them.
Hmm.
In that story in Mark, Jesus Christ is angry. He's indignant. The word is actually indignant there in Mark. He's angry at the disciples for stopping them. And so this is a big deal to Jesus Christ. He wants that action to happen. He wants you as an active participant. And so what does that mean? That means that he's going to talk to you. He's going to direct you. He's going to give you a plan. He's going to tell you what to do.
And empower you to do it. And
That's right.
that's another really important is recognizing you're not doing this in your own power. You are going as an emissary of the King of Kings who wants to work in your child's life. We've often talked about the fact that, in light of the Great Commission, go into all the world, Jerusalem, Judea, the uttermost parts of the earth, your home is your Jerusalem. That is ground zero for the gospel work that you are doing. And when you recognize the importance of the work that you're doing, the impact of the work that you're doing right there in your home, it really changes your level of contentment and joy in the journey, honestly.
Yeah. And so number one is commitment. Number two is realize that what you do actually matters. And then number three is this right focus, because once you actually say, this is what I want, this is the commitment that I have, and then you go to what I do actually matters, then you start thinking about how do I actually work on myself? I need to stay close to the
Yeah.
master. You have the right focus. You're spending time in prayer. You're spending time in scripture.
Mm.
You're thinking, not long after this, I think the next massive step that happened with Leslie and I, at least for me, was hearing that pastor, which is a completely different church, completely different city, saying you reproduce who you are.
Yeah.
And at that point, I started going, whoa, that means that not only am I an active participant in this discipleship of my children, but they're actually looking to me in the problems that I have, the victories that I
Mm.
have, the things that I read, the way I handle things, them seeing me pray actually impacts them in a big way. And so then you start thinking about, I got to have the right focus on
Right.
this.
Right.
I got to have the right focus. And this is the other way that this is the other area where parents that have the right commitment get askew,
Yeah.
because you get so busy that you forget to actually sit down and actually pray and read and learn the Bible.
Well, and even on top of that, yes, people get so busy that they neglect that personal time with the Lord, but you also get so busy that you neglect your relationships. Like, it's so easy. In fact, we're right now in the middle of a joy of missing out JOMO challenge this summer, where we're just trying to slow down and actually focus on a lot of these things, getting in God's word, growing spiritually, but also really investing in those relationships, because you cannot impact someone. You cannot, have that impact on their life that we were talking about in that second point if you are not investing in really strengthening and growing those relationships. So your relationship with God and your relationship with your spouse, your children, all of those things are really important in this.
So that joy of missing out challenge, do you have to be a 365 member to be a
No,
part of
nope.
that?
We're actually running it on Instagram. I'll give you a link. Because also on Saturdays, I'm sending all of the prompts through the week so that if you're not catching it on Instagram, you're able to get those prompts at the end of the week so you can try them. But these are just really simple things to help people slow down, get really intentional, really missional this summer, because so many times, kind of in this same vein, I would go into the summer with so many big plans of what I wanted to do, accomplish missionally, and all these things. And I would get so busy doing stuff that I'd get to the end of it and have nothing to show for it. And I'd be so frustrated. And so the Joy of Missing Out Challenge is really to help you be missional and intentional every day of this summer. So that's going on now. And I will look in the show notes and I'll give you a link to sign up to get those weekly updates.
So the three here is commitment, it's realizing that what you do actually matters, and then the right focus. And so when we were talking about when you start to actually think about discipling your kids, these three things, right? You're preparing yourself in order to actually be able to do this discipleship, because discipleship is not a complicated thing. And it's something that people complicate over and over and over again. It's like the gospel as well. How do you get saved? And they're amazed at how easy it is. And this is the same kind of scenario, is that you're actually preparing yourself to be able to disciple your young people that are
Yeah.
around you. And what discipleship is that it's just life on life.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, that's really what it is. And what you have to be is you have to be present in order to do that. But you also have to have these things to be prepared for this. And so there's a commitment to it. So you take advantage of the opportunities that you have. There's this realizing what you do matters. Well, if you don't do this, who else is going to do it? And then you have the right focus where you're actually focused on the things that God is showing you on a daily basis. And sometimes discipleship is just taking a ride with your kids and saying, what is God showing you today?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they talk for a little while, and then you go, this is what God's showing me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Discipleship.
We've talked a lot about how when the kids were younger, we would just start as we would come out of our devotions and get ready for breakfast or whatever. David and I would share what God taught us that morning. What we didn't realize in doing that is we were modeling for our children what it looks like as a believer to get up, getting God's word first thing, and then talk about it. And so it made it much easier as they got older for them to build those habits as well, because the only Christians they ever saw in the morning got up, had their devotions, and then talked about it. And that is such a powerful platform that God has given us as parents. We are able to show our children what living for Jesus looks like, what loving God, loving people looks like. And so as we then leverage that on behalf of our children, that discipleship just overflows naturally. It's in those in-between moments that Deuteronomy talks about, as you walk, as you talk, as you do the dishes, as you do the laundry. That's when discipleship happens. And if you're focused on it, you've got the commitment to do it, you recognize the privileged position and platform that God has given you, and you have the right focus, it really does become very easy to make choices throughout the day that are very much aligned with the mission that God has given you.
Yeah. And I mean, if you're listening to this and the thought of this is actually even overwhelming you, right? You're thinking, man, I don't know how I'm able to actually do this. These are the kind of things that we go through on a regular basis, especially in the Heart School Parenting Intensive, where
Right.
we actually take the 7 attributes, which we'll actually include the 7 attributes in the show notes of this podcast as well.
Those are the 7 attributes of a successful homeschooler. It's 7 things that if you see them in your life, if you see them in your family, you know for sure that you're going in the right direction, that you are on your way to missionally doing what God has called you to do. So it starts with just recognizing your call, realigning your thinking, which is what we're talking about today. And a lot of people think of realigning your thinking as, don't don't bring school home, but it impacts so much more than that. And I hope as we've just kind of scratched the surface on that today, you're getting a view of how big of a deal it is to actually realign the way that you think about who you are, what role God has given you, the control that you have over all of this stuff, how impactful that is. So that's kind of the second attribute. You refine your vision, and with your mission, you start setting the right goals, the right benchmarks, all of those things. You then refocus on the relationships that matter most. And we talk a lot about your marriage, your relationship with your kids, how love factors into that, how anger factors into that, all of these things that are just really, really practical. Um, Recognizing the privilege of your position, which we've talked a little bit about today. God has called you to be an active participant in the discipleship of your children, which is just incredible. Restoring order, taking all of these things that you've learned and making sure that your home is functioning in that way. And then you're able to relish every moment of the adventure that God has you on. Those 7 attributes that I, every successful heart schooling family that I've ever met has those evident in their lives. Those will make such a difference in the way that your family functions. So yeah, I will include in the show notes how to get that workshop to learn more about it. It's also in the Heart School book that I wrote, which I'll give you a link to, so that you're able to read more about that, because I do believe that those simple concepts will just excite you and set you free as you're starting to make these shifts to be a lot more missional within your family.
So what we're talking about today is this element of creating your mission, right? Recognizing what your mission is, recognizing what your call is, and then you have this process of actually applying this to the way that your home runs. And part of that is that second step that you were just talking about, where you're realigning your thinking. And that's what we're talking about today is that you start off with a commitment, and then you actually allow that to kind of flow through what you do on a day-to-day basis. And what is happening there is that you are realizing that what you do actually matters,
Yep.
and then you also have the right focus. And if these things actually overwhelm you, or those 7 attributes, if that really sounds good to you, please download the audio that we're going to have in the show notes. But the other thing that you could do is that we have we're taking new members into the Heart School Parenting Intensive that we're going to be going through this summer, and you can apply for that right now. And it's at teachthemdiligently.net/apply. And
Mm-hmm.
we'll put that link in the show notes as well. You can go in there, you can apply, we'll read your application, and then we'll respond back to you and then actually ask you for a meeting, and then we'll kind of go through the process from there.
Yeah.
But we hope that you guys will apply.
Yeah, we would love to get to know you more. We would love to be able to walk really hand in hand with you as you start applying these things to your family. And I guess our challenge for you as we leave here is just to identify if you have that commitment. Have you made that step of saying that I want to do what the Lord wants me to do? You are wanting to get in step with what God has actually given you to do within your home, and then realizing that what you do matters. You're not a puppet. Things aren't just spinning around you. You are able to seize control of the day by day decisions within your family, what you're involved in, what you're not, being intentional and missional with every one of those decisions, building those relationships, making sure that your relationship with the Lord is strong, and having the right focus, which is number 3, making sure that you are growing and changing so that you can then leverage what God is teaching you on behalf of your children to disciple and shepherd their hearts. Those things will make a huge difference in how your family functions, in the peace within your homeschool, and really in the joy that you have in following God's plan for your family day in and day out. So thank you so much for joining us today. We are just really, really honored that you would spend this time with us. Hope you have a great rest of your day. And David and I look forward to talking to you again real soon.
All right.